Making mistakes and trolling every once in a while is only natural, but there are some big mistakes that when fixed can really improve your gameplay. In this video, we're going over one big impactful mistake for each hero and how to stop doing them. If you want to grind even harder and use pro tactics in your games, make sure to check out the link in the description for a GameLeap membership. There are lots of guides from experienced coaches on there, including myself as a contenders player and many more who have coached top teams. Let's get started right away with Ashe. For a spamming or pick-based hero like her, it's really easy to miss position. Even though she's by no means a bad hero, if you compare her to Sojourn, you can easily see how much more vulnerable she is to getting dived on. The number one thing to fix for Ashe is wasting your coach gun. Knowing what is or isn't a waste of your coach gun comes up to just one key question. How vulnerable are you to getting pushed in the 10 seconds after you use it? This is a super common problem. Most of the other spammy heroes with mobility have to play around it too. If you're playing too close with no mobility, big surprise, you won't be able to escape as fast from a push. Although you might not always die, you definitely become a big target, and if you're close to dying, your supports are going to expend the resources to save you, and if that means they have to use their defensive abilities, then that's how it is. Either even more cooldowns get used to make up for a wasted coach gun, or you just die. This issue is massive when playing against dive teams, or even any composition with Lucio in it. But fixing it is simple. You should still play far up looking for damage and picks before the fight starts, but you'll want to kite back before the two teams even get close to each other. If you're too close to your team when the fighting starts, your coach gun just won't be enough to reactively escape like Sojourn can with Power Slide, so it's better to bite the bullet and just play safer earlier. Next up, Bastion. All of his abilities are about shooting hard, so there's really not that many mistakes you can make. Missing your shots and your grenades are just mechanics issues. You'll just have to aim harder the next time. But even though he's a simple hero, it's really easy to do one thing wrong: mistiming your turret form. It may seem easy to simply time it correctly, but the problem is that the best way to use it depends on the team you're playing into. When playing into Sigma or even Reinhardt, using your Bastion form early makes it really easy to kite away from. Even if you trade it for a lot of shield health or a kinetic grasp, it's not really worth it. Even using your form too late can give the enemy team a lot of opportunities to close the distance or gain some other kind of advantage to wipe your whole team. Your turret form won't be doing much if you're all caught in a blizzard or a gravitic flux. But the big thing to fix is using your form too early. You should already be spamming with your recon form before going in to get more effective damage done with your turret form. Now just do that for longer. Stay ready to push in, but don't be baited into swinging around the corner into 5 players ready to deal with you. Cassidy's up next, and if you're still trying to play him, there's a right way and a wrong way. The wrong way is the easy way, shooting enemies from main with your team, and the way to fix it is by switching to a more flanky playstyle. This may sound like a joke, but I am totally serious when I say you should play Cassidy more like Junkrat. They're both spammy heroes with high burst damage that have too big of a hitbox and too little range. Playing for range and just shooting seems like the right thing to do, but without flanking and contesting enemy flanks, you'll be outmatched by other heroes. Cassidy still has a really fast time to kill, and his magnetic grenade gives him a big advantage in 1v1s. He may not be able to compete as well in long range duels, but he's still very effective in close range. Put yourself in that position and just hit your shots. Moving on to Echo. With so much damage at your potential, it's really tempting to only focus the tank. Focusing the enemy tank actually works, but the biggest mistake is still focusing them too much. Echo's main strength isn't just killing tanks. There are 4 whole other members of the team that need to be dealt with as well, and the way to do so is by targeting them way more. Focusing Beam is a great ability, but it's even better than it gets credit for. If you didn't know, it's got a range of 16 meters. That's 1 meter more than Zarya's primary fire, and it's really important to abuse that range so you don't have to get too close to your targets. Echo's own large hitbox means that you're staying at a safe distance and near cover as much as you can. It's easy to focus tanks because they're easy to hit and also easy to approach. They're usually in the front line. Even though you'll have to get close to the enemy team to go for more executions and picks, it's worth it for the chance to instantly evaporate anyone with a massive ability combo. You can deal 500 plus damage with all your abilities, but ironically, only tanks can consistently survive that much. Now for Genji, who's especially vulnerable to making mistakes. And when you're going for your Dragon Blade, it can get even worse. But at least the biggest mistake has a simple fix: overcommitting with your blade. Dragon Blade is a mid-tier ultimate, but it still has high potential. With a perfect setup, it can totally wipe the enemy team, but that perfect setup is really rare. Instead of always engaging fully with your blade, keep either your dash or deflect to stay alive when it gets too dicey. Whenever Dragon Blade is going on, everybody focuses Genji, and even with Nano Boost, you can't always just force your way through to a fight win. Still keep your eye out for the opportunity for a quick kill with a dash combo, but always stay ready to float right back out of the fight when you get too much focus on you. Forcing basic abilities with your ultimate sounds pretty bad, but you gotta remember that Genji gets a lot of value from playing into people with no abilities. Forcing a ton of abilities also helps your team, not just you. As for Hanzo, he doesn't have the same issues with his ultimate, just fire and forget, but it is really easy to waste your storm arrows. Just like with Echo, they can be used to burst down tanks. 325 damage in 1.25 seconds is a lot of damage and fast. But again, most tanks handle that damage easily. Unless your whole team is focusing them along with you, it's better to use your storm arrows for long range duels. It's a great switch up from the normal rhythm of charging up an arrow every second. I still stand by the fact that Junkrat and Cassidy are really similar right now, but the biggest mistake for Junkrat isn't really not flanking enough. Most Junk players nowadays have that hardwired into their gameplay. Instead, the biggest mistake is in how you use your concussion mines. You're more dangerous and more survivable with more charges available. Junkrat's big hitbox and slow moving damage makes a lot of heroes pretty good into him in the duel, so don't spend all of your concussive mines looking for picks. Try to keep them going at a healthy rate instead of blowing them all for one big burst of power. When it comes to Mei, the biggest misuse of her kit has to be her ultimate. The mistake you want to avoid is rushing to use it instead of setting it up perfectly. Even though heroes can cleanse, teleport, and pull allies out of the blizzard, you still have all the tools to lock down the enemy frontline and freeze them fast. You just have to avoid taking all the attention on yourself. Mei plays in a lot of fast composition, so it makes sense to want to run in, throw down your wall and blizzard, and go go go. But you have to minimize the damage you take or you won't be able to apply the freezing effect fast enough. You have a tank to soak damage for you, so you don't need to die from running in with ultimate in hand. Taking your time to set it up is more effective, and you'll also naturally force more abilities that way. It may not seem like it, but it really is still a strong ultimate, even though there are ways to counter it, so you better not waste it. For Pharah, the biggest mistake is definitely picking her in the hero select screen. But if you're at peace with that and just want to fly and hit rockets regardless of how tough it's going to be, I can respect that. So the first thing to do is stay as high up in the sky as the map allows. The mistake that kills you as Pharah, even when she's in a good state, is committing too close to your targets. As you engage, it's natural to drop closer to whoever you're shooting at to hit more rockets, but you need to avoid dropping so low that it opens up more angles on you. Having flight gives you a lot of control over your positioning, so you need to use it to isolate fights one at a time. If you can't get the kill in 3 rockets, it's probably time to head out. Reaper is also a generally weak pick, but he's looking a lot better with all of the rush and brawl heroes being stronger recently. Although there's not really a big mistake with how straightforward Reaper's playstyle is, there is one thing: only going for solo plays. More Reaper-friendly comps are viable now, so there's not as much of a need to force 1v1s on backline or hard flank every fight. Instead, take advantage of your tank. If your tank is a beefy frontliner like Ryan or Ram, you can easily follow them when they're trying to push. If you're with someone more mobile like Winston or Doom, you can teleport in as they dive to split the enemy's attention. Even spammy tanks like Orisa and Sigma can protect you in the mid-fight. It's not really the classic Reaper playstyle that's been molded from being a really bad hero for a long time, but it pays off massively. Next up is Sojourn, and she's got a ton of ways to misplay her kit, but most of them are simple, like firing your railgun at too low of a charge or power sliding into the enemy team. Sojourn happens to have a really undervalued ability, so the mistake for her is wasting Disruptor Shot. Way too many players throw this ability out randomly, just trying to deal poke damage. It's otherwise an amazing ability that rounds out Sojourn's kit and makes her even more stronger than she normally is. There are 2 ways to use it, the best being to zone and split teams. An area of that size dealing 60 damage per second is really strong. It's basically just a Winston, so it's way better when you time it when the enemy team is trying to push towards yours. The second way you can use it is to help you get picks. If you're fighting someone at a long range around cover, you can combo your railgun shot into your disruptor shot so that if you can't hit the headshot, the extra damage will clean them up. This isn't as reliable since not one-shotting your targets will always give them a chance to recover, but it's good when the enemy team is playing more split, and it's way better than just randomly throwing it out before the fight. Soldier 76 seems pretty hard to mess up, but there are still way too many soldiers that sit in the front line only. It's really easy to tell how flanky you have to be in the match just by what hero the enemy tank is playing. Sticking in main is only going to afford you so many duels with a tank in your face, but it does give you good sightlines to focus that tank. If you're against Doom or Jungle Queen, it's probably best to only focus them when they're actively taking space, but against Mauga or Ramatra, your damage is amazing for forcing their abilities early. But again, tanks are priority 2, whereas getting picks on the flank is priority 1. Even if you're on the flank, you can find an angle on the tank, so use that sprint to your advantage to stay aggressive and annoying. Sombra's rework is still pretty unfamiliar territory, so the biggest mistake is a really bad habit from old Sombra: always engaging with your hack. With the removal of the Opportunist passive, the only thing that hack does for you is silence abilities for 1.5 seconds and deal faster damage with your virus. But the recovery time from your hack and the cast time from your virus add up to almost a whole second already, leaving you with very little time to finish your target with your SMG before the ability lockout ends. Going for the hack is great for when you have more people diving with you, or when you're denying powerful abilities, but for 1v1s, you're better off just going for your SMG and virus. Sometimes you don't even need the virus. 160 DPS with a good spread is pretty good for an SMG. Onto Symmetra. Her teleporter is one of the most undervalued abilities in the game. It can do so much for everyone on your team. The mistake you want to avoid is just saving it too much. It's best used often and aggressively, even if you simply don't step through it. Placing an access point to a whole new location from the safety of your team is pretty crazy when you think about it, so make sure that you're always looking for ways that you and your team can use it. But don't worry, holding onto it to escape from an engage is still fine, and very valuable when Mauga's cage fight comes up. For Torbjorn, while placing your turret in a bad position isn't ideal, the biggest and most common mistake is definitely letting your turret handle flank angles on its own. One of the best ways to play Torb is by being flanky and using your turret to cover your team's weaknesses, but you can really go all the way with the flanky playstyle. Your range is so high that you can take a wildly idiotic off-angle super flank and still bait players to push you. Bigger escort or hybrid maps are great for this, where there's a lot of side routes and angles to control. Almost at the end is Tracer, who despite being back to full glory, isn't an easy hero to just pick up and get value with. Most players take even duels, not using their blinks to the fullest to avoid taking damage. This becomes most apparent on open maps like New Queen Street, where Tracer has to commit further to deal damage, and also has to escape further when she wants to leave. Instead of just taking the duel to the face, play more active and look for other duels. If you're fighting someone who's already looking at you, there's a much lower chance that you're going to survive if you go for them, and an even lower chance that you'll get the pick. And finally, Widowmaker. There aren't a lot of abilities to get wrong, but I will say that using your Inforesight at the right time is still really important. Most players use it as a throwaway ultimate, but it really is amazing when timed right. When against an enemy Widowmaker, you might feel pressured to only use it to counter theirs, but you can definitely help your team swing aggressively with the team-wide wall hacks. Just make sure they're in position to actually push and aren't too far back so they get the full value. That's it for one big mistake for every DPS hero. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.